So we're officially not in a severe drought anymore. But I think that's what led to a lot of those different flavors. And one of the things that we've kind of talked about is doing comparisons between California orange blossom and Florida orange blossom to see what the differences are. I think that specific batch of orange wouldn't even have compared to if you just did a regular year or California and Florida. It was just so citrus forward, and some of that citrus bitterness carried over into the final version of that mead.
Yeah, it really was amazing. Like I just can't even describe it. It was just quite interesting for something that you say was an accident and just a traditionals.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
love the happy accidents. The problem is that when they're happy accidents, you're like, shit, how am I going to do that again?
Yeah, I went back and I was like, I need 2 more barrels of this honey, and they're like, yeah, that doesn't work like that. We don't have any more. So.
Yeah, that is crazy. So, what are you working on now?
So on Friday we pitched our first session, which is Passion Orange Guava. That will end up around 8% or so. We did 71B with that one also.
Wow.
That'll end up around 6.5 bricks and be carbonated. So definitely on the sweeter side. But I'm hoping some of that carbonic acid eats through a little bit of that sugar. And we're going to be pouring that at the Brewers Guild Invitational. So we're pouring for like 800 people, which is pretty cool. Which means I had to make more than just one keg to ensure we can pour for everybody. And then going forward, I mean, we're trying to see if we can finally lay our footprint down and lease our own space. Haven't really thought about batches past the one we just pitched. Unfortunately, it's still having the normal day job hasn't really been conducive to projecting future batches right now.
Yeah.
But the growers we work with, especially for our fruit, they give me a list every month of what's coming up, and we're coming up on stone fruit season, so there's a lot of opportunity there. I just got to figure out what we want to do.
Well, you do live in the land of perpetual fruitiness, I mean, there's just fruit happening all the time out there, seems like. No matter what time of year, there's something, seems like they're picking it or packing it or shipping it or something.
We get a lot of off-season stuff. I mean, even strawberries we get twice a year. We get winter strawberries and we get spring strawberries. So we're pretty lucky in that respect.
Yeah, you really are. Is it just you, or is this a family affair?
It's me and a very supportive wife. If my wife wasn't so understanding, I would probably have my own meadery, but also live in it.
But just live in that upstairs room above the meadery,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now it's just us. We're not at the point where we think we need to bring anybody else in. I mean, once we actually get up and running, and the first fermenters that we purchased from one of the breweries were 7 barrels, so it's we're not going to be doing small batches right away, or what to start off with. So it may turn into something where we have to have some family or some friends come over and help us. But right now, just keeping it simple, just myself and maybe the wife and my 3-year-old that likes to help me mix and cut fruit. Then I think we're good.
Yeah, when the 3-year-old gets a little older, they're really good for taste testing because their palates are straightforward, and they tell you what they think. My daughter was 6 or 7 when she started tasting my meads, and she'd be like, "Mommy, this is icky," or "Golly, Mommy, I really like that one."
Yeah, my 3-year-old loves to try the must before I pitch the yeast, and when we have a batch going at home, he always comes up to me and he's like, "Daddy, can I help you mix?" And he wants to get the drill out and the wine degasser, and he just has a ball with it.
Oh, those are fun.
Yeah, the problem is when they turn 15 and they keep tasting it when you're not home.
Yeah. Are we having?
You're the one who set up taps in your basement.
Yeah. Yeah, you converted.
I'm sure you can figure out a way to lock those taps eventually, Manny.
Yeah, man.
Not against those girls.
Man puts an entire barrel of Guinness and then wonders, why it's going down so fast. Oh, jeez.
You did think it was leaking.
Yeah.
It's a leak.
Yeah.
You keep telling yourself that.
That opens up an interesting question. Just how elaborate is your home setup, Alex?
It's not very crazy. I have a couple Speedle 8-par 20 liters, 30 liters. That's what I do most of my experimental stuff on now. Of course, there's a couple of barrels in the garage, but those kind of get filled and they keep to themselves for like 6 months or 9 months or so. And in terms of cooling, I have a pretty interesting setup, I guess you could say. The homebrew store, when I was going by there before I started buying everything online in large quantities, they had these cooling bags, and it was essentially this giant insulated bag that you could sit your fermenters inside of. So what I'll do now is if I have an active batch going, I'll put the fermenter in a giant bag, and every day I rotate in like gallons of water that are frozen into like giant ice cubes. So I'll have like 4 around it, and every day I'm like taking one out and switching it in with a new one. And I'm pretty easily able to keep the temperature around like 16, 17 C. So it's worked out pretty good, and the only drawback is I have to take some vegetables out of the freezer and cook them so I can make space for the water. So.
Yeah, that would.
So
I
it's
could see where
healthy.
that'd be a problem. Yeah.
It would be healthy if I cook them. If I cook them.
So if you had to pick one style, I guess, because I don't want to try to restrict you to just one mead recipe, but what's your favorite style?
I love slicers. Oh my goodness. As a kid, like I couldn't get enough apple juice, especially being as close as we are to, the orchards in San Diego and in the Central Valley. Getting fresh pressed cider was a treat as a kid, and now to have cider that, could ruin my night is way better. So.
Grown-up cider. We used to, when I was a teenager, and I was a drama kid, so I was in drama club, so we were staying after school a lot. We would get, and I grew up in apple country too, in northwestern Michigan, and we would get a jug of apple cider from the local farm stand and stick it in our lockers and then leave it in there until the plastic jug started to deform because the apple juice was fermenting. And that's when we knew it was
sparkling cider.
Yeah, and that's when we knew it was ready, and then we'd take it backstage and we'd be like going back there going hee 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 hee, and drinking this, and our drama director could never figure out why we couldn't remember our lines.
Jeez. That reminds me of the first cider that I made with Red Star champagne yeast.
Oh yeah.
Oh. That was enough to put me off cider for a while.
I don't know. I think my first sizer that I made, and I did it the way most people do their first sizers with Christmas spices. I still like it that way. I just really like cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice and ginger, and I like those flavors. But I did it. I believe I did. I have to look at my notes, but I'm pretty sure I did it with champagne yeast. But there was so much honey in there that it was just like a 19% cider by the time it was done. So
that'll fix it.
And it turned out surprisingly good. This was back when I was working with, in the dark, out in the outer darkness, because there wasn't any meat information online except what I had managed to track down, and there was damn little of that, So
when we were still putting acid up front.
There wasn't even much by way of books out there that you could find. Acton and Duncan and that existed, but this was before Amazon, so you couldn't just go, yank it up on Amazon and order it sent to your house, and damn sure the little bookstores around me didn't have it, so it was like, oh, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing here, so we're just going to throw honey in this, taste it till it seems like it's sweet enough, and then, and then we're going to throw this here yeast in it and just rip the top off the packet and dump it in there and then agitate the crap out of the bucket, and, and I got a bucket and airlocks and stuff from the brew shop because they had all that stuff, but they didn't know anything about mead, and, And so I rapidly became the go-to girl at my brew shop because nobody else knew anything either. You know? So even though I didn't know that much, I was the expert because I knew more than everybody else did, which was not a lot, but you know. But yeah, it was really fun figuring that out, you know. And amazingly, my cider came out not so bad. I mean, it wasn't terrible at all.
Yeah, and that's the exact same way it worked out with ours. And I just went by the flavors that I like, and it's pretty much the exact same profile you just mentioned. It's like a little bit of orange for acid. You had cinnamon, you had clove, you had nutmeg.
Yep.
And one of my buddies was helping me make it. I told him, come over, we'll have a couple beers. We're going to make some mead. And he's like, okay, you said beer, I'm coming over. So I told him, put some clove in there, and I didn't know what the proportions were at the time. I was just like, oh, clove sounds good, put clove in there.
So I
turn around, like, no joke, like, I turned around, and he had put 50 cloves in 1 gallon. And
oh my God,
floating across the top. And I'm like, I don't think that's right, but whatever, okay, fine. So that night I go on Gotmead, and somebody was like, no, it's probably like 1, maybe 2 cloves per gallon. And I immediately run downstairs, get some chopsticks, sanitize them, and start picking them out of the top with chopsticks. and eventually I left 2 in there, and it ended up being perfect. So he likes to say that, the recipe is, 6 hours of 50 cloves and then 2 cloves the rest of the time. Like,
so just let it look at the cloves for a little bit and then yank those out of there. You're done now.
Like making tea.
Pretty much.
Introduce it to the cloves.
It takes a must bath and then they have to come out.
But
so.
I managed to make my best cherry cider, or my best cherry cider ever. I go home to Michigan, or I was at the time going home to Michigan once a year, and that's cherry country as well as apple country. And so you can go right to all the cherry processing facilities, and you can get flash frozen, pre-pitted sweet and dark cherries. You can also buy jugs of cherry juice. And so I would get like 6 gallon jugs of cherry juice and bring them home. And so I was making cherry cider because there was no water in this. It was cherry juice and honey and yeast. And so I was doing this, and I'm tasting, and I'm going, it's missing something, and I don't know what it's missing. And so I got on my Penzies catalog. It was back when I was still getting a catalog from them. I'm flipping through it and, reading descriptions and trying to figure out because I cook this way too. It's like, I need a flavor, but I don't know what, and so I'll dig through my spices and smell things until I find something that seems right. So I was basically doing that sort of, digitally speaking, by just looking at the descriptions of all these different things, and I found malab, which is apparently it's used in salads and in certain dishes in Iran and Iraq, and it's denatured cherry pits. So they somehow get the arsenic or whatever it is that's in cherry pits out of them, and then they crush them up, they dry them, and they crush them up, and then they sprinkle them on salads and stuff. And they had this, and I'm like, how intriguing. So I ordered a bag of it, and so when it came, I'm like, well, okay, I don't see how this could be bad. So I took a handful of them and just chucked them in the carboy. It was in secondary at that point. Chucked them in the carboy and just let it sit on these for like a month and a half. And it was a 5-gallon batch, so I took like a big old handful of these and just chucked them right in there. And so when I racked them off of that, I kid you not, the thing tasted like a bloody cherry pie, like crust. You could taste crust. It was like, and I'm not sure I can ever duplicate it. I'm going to try because it was the best cherry cider I've ever had.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it
really
does
sound
was.
very good.
And it was so easy. I mean, it was basically like making an apple cider, so same basic proportions of juice and honey, but I just threw this malab in there and let it sit on it for about, 30 days, I think it was. I'll have to look at my notes to be for sure, but it was, it just turned out so amazingly good, and somehow that one just disappeared really, really fast, too. I don't know what happened. I would take like a case of mead with me every Ren Fair I went to, and I have like 3 of those leather bodas, the wineskins. and I would fill them up in the car. And you're not supposed to obviously bring outside food or drink into these things. And so I would just like string myself about with like 4 or 5 of these bodas and then wear a cloak, and I'd walk right in, and you're walking in the big. I go in when they do the opening of the gates, so it's like this giant crush of people, and it's not like they're patting everybody down, so it's real easy to get in there. And so everywhere I went, people were like asking me to. It was like having a string of baby birds. They're all like, I want some of this, my mom.